welcome to my little talk here today. My name is Sabine Born. I'm a certified dog trainer, and I had 307 Happy Dog here in town for like 4 or 5 years now, and I'm offering ethical and fear-free based dog training because my big mission is that we learn to understand our dogs and help our dogs to behave in a way that we think is appropriate versus just pushing them into what we want them to do. And sometimes we just talked about little dogs. It's easy to just pick up the dog or hold them down, but I know from like years of experience now that their dogs are very capable to learn, and they are very willing to learn what we humans would like them to do. So we might as well help them and teach them with some patience and of course lots of empathy for their behavior. So when I was asked to talk here, I was wondering, like, okay, talking about dog behavior, so what are we actually talking about? And dog behavior is based on experience, genetics, and we come to that a little later, but I wanted to call this talk Dogs Talk to Us, because they actually do, but they don't use words. So that is oftentimes the confusing parts. And then when humans interact with dogs, they are like assuming if we talk to them long enough, they're somehow gonna understand what we mean, and it usually is not the case, and it's very difficult for the dogs to understand it. Hello, come on in. I just started. How are you? Good. So, yeah, my name is Sabine. I'm a certified dog trainer here in town, and I have 307 Happy Dog, and I have like a big mission of offering ethical and kind and fun, fear-free based dog training based on science. Okay, so when we talk about dog behavior, what does that even mean? It means it's all the actions or reactions and communication signals that dogs give us to somehow express what they learned, express how they feel, express what they would like to do. And if you think, I don't know, do you have a dog? Yep. Yeah, what kind?
I don't know. He's probably a border collie.
Just a mix, kind of, okay. So the more we get to know our dogs, the more we learn to read them too, but there's a lot of things that all the dogs do, and when they talk to each other, they have a very clear understanding of what certain things mean, and most of it is based on trying to stay safe, trying to stay out of trouble, and signaling to the other dogs that they are like, I come in peace, I don't want to fight, all of that. So that is a big, big part of what dogs do when they're interacting with each other. So surprise, surprise, that's what they also try to do when they interact with us. And this is where the problem starts a lot of the time, because we humans do not communicate like that. We have certain body language signals too. I don't know, we can do something like that. But most of our communication is with words and language. And of course we can have certain expressions too that signal fear and stuff like that. But our way to communicate with other humans is with the language, right? And another big part that we humans do a lot is when we talk to each other, it is polite in human communication to look each other in the eye while we're talking. With dogs, there's just one example, that is not polite, that is almost aggressive. When a dog stares at another dog like that, that can be seen as some sort of at least tension, and it can be seen as aggression or some standoffish behavior. So there we have already a big difference between dogs and humans. So all of our dogs' behavior is a mix of certain influences. One of them is definitely genetics, and we just talked about terriers. You can talk about German Shepherds, Border Collies. They all have certain traits that were bred into the breed on purpose, because humans have been breeding dogs for hundreds of years, and they wanted them to do certain things. So now in our world, a lot of the time, and I mean, we're here in Wyoming, so a lot of people actually use Border Collies for work. But I come from Germany. I have people I know, I have friends who live in a, like a townhouse, and they do have a Border Collie or an Australian Shepherd. They have a tiny little yard, and they need to learn that these breeds are not there because they are so cute. They actually behave in a certain way because they were meant to do that. So if we try to train the Australian Shepherd out of the Australian Shepherd, that's when behavioral problems start, because it's so frustrating for the dogs. And we have to give them an outlet for what their breed is meant to do, to be able to then curb certain other behaviors into something that we humans can live with, right? Then a big factor in the upbringing of a dog, or in how they behave as an adult dog, is how they develop when they were young. And the critical window for that is when they're between 3 and 15 weeks old. So you probably heard of socializing or proper socialization, and that means that the socialization, it does not mean, I should say first, that you throw the puppy in with 20 kids or as many people as you can on the concert, or you just throw them in a big group of dogs and it's like he needs to socialize. No, that's not a safe and proper way to introduce them to something new. It always needs to be a controlled environment where you look for the puppy to feel safe, and then they might show these signals of, ooh, this is a bit much for me, and that's a good moment when a human can step in to interfere and just keep the puppy safe. So every new social experience becomes a good experience. It needs to be a positive experience to actually do something positive in the brain of the dog. And then they learn the world is a safe place, new people are safe, new dogs are safe, new sounds are safe, surfaces, and you would be surprised what things are all of a sudden not okay for dogs anymore. But this time in their life is super important for them to learn that it's generally safe and that they can trust you also. Because if you just throw them in with 20 other kids or dogs, then they may be like, oh my God, like she just let me do all this. This was a bit much. So then you get a trust issue there too. And then of course, learning history, you know, what things have worked for them, what things have not worked for them. And sometimes we are accidentally or purposefully reinforcing certain behaviors. I like to bring up the example of counter surfing. If dogs, you know, that when they're young and they like look up on the counter and there's a big piece of cheese and they somehow get to it, well then they learn it's definitely worth looking, right? It's definitely to try to see if there's something there. That's learned behavior. But that is, of course, accidentally. We don't want them to have the cheese. So then we try to manage that whole thing by keeping the counters clean when the dogs are young, so they don't learn the wrong thing. I always like that as an example of learned behavior that is not what we want. And then, of course, learning history when we start training and we reward the things that we want, so then we see more of the behavior that we want. That will be sit, down, stay, leash walking, all of that stuff. And then, of course, the environment in which they live and what happens to them on a daily basis. And a good environment, a good example for that, I think, is you know, rescue dogs that were somehow left in the backyard, never exposed to anything. Somebody throws like a bag of food there and lets them do whatever they want. Never any human contact. Of course, they're not going to behave in a way that our well-socialized golden retriever puppy is going to behave, who had nothing but good experiences, right? And it goes to the point where if people mistreat them or they are like kind of mean to them, they you know, I don't know, they hit them, they yell at them, then the dogs learn, ooh, I can't trust people, right? Or I can't trust men, I can't trust tall women, whatever it is that that happened to them. They try to make sense of it and try to keep themselves safe. And then, of course, behavior is also based on things like health, how much stress they have every day. They also need downtimes. And health is a big one because of when the dogs get older, behavior might change. And we sometimes wonder why that is. And it could definitely be that the dog is all of a sudden in pain because they're getting older, they have problems with their hip or problems with their digestive tract. So whenever we watch that in dogs that are getting older, and we don't want to just, you know, be surprised or get mad or upset that the dog's changing their behavior. We have to think of health issues. And a lot of the time, a good solid health vet checkup will solve a lot of problems that we can do with pain meds or maybe a therapy, change in diet. All of that can help with that behavior to go away. And if you think about it, if you are not feeling well, you know, we can have headaches, tummy aches, broken leg, whatever. We're also not in the best mood of our lifetime, right? So all of that is very explainable, but sometimes people forget that our dogs are not just the same all their lives. They go through stages, and they have feelings, they have things that can happen to them, and all of that is expressed in how they behave. So I said dogs talk to us. So now we need to learn what they're saying. And it is really important so we can understand how they feel, and then we can help them. And a lot of the time, it's very simple adjustments that make all the difference. So in my daily training experience, I have that so many times that we have like a little adjustment of the human behavior, and the dog starts to be like, ah, they start to understand me. And you can even see the dog is kind of taking a breath. They're like, finally somebody's listening to me. So like I said, they have feelings like fear, insecurity. They can be very happy, they can be super frustrated if they don't get what they want immediately, things like that. Of course, they can be sleepy, hungry, stressed, or excited. All of that is super normal dog stuff. And if we learn to notice it, then things become much easier. And they're expressing it with their eyes, their ears, their tail, their whole body, basically, the mouth, and the hair, like the hackles, if you imagine. Tail, I already said. And when you try to understand what the dog is telling you or what they're communicating, you always have to look at the whole dog. It's not only one thing. And one example that a lot of people misunderstand is a wagging tail. A wagging tail is not always a happy dog. If the rest of the dog is super stiff, and I'm gonna imitate dogs here, then a wagging tail, and if you think, you probably have seen that, a dog that looks and stares at something and the tail is doing that. Technically the tail is wagging, but it's not wagging like that. It's like tense, and it's, for whatever reason, right? So then we have to figure out why that's happening. But that is an example that just the tail that moves doesn't necessarily mean the dog is happy and relaxed and ready to play or ready to interact with you. It could be just this tension that causes the tail to be high and doing this. Just an example. So let's start with the easy dog, right? A happy dog that is safe to approach, safe to interact with. One example of that would be my golden retriever. Like, she's mostly like that. Open mouth, maybe tongue hanging out or not. You see like very soft, like look in the eye, floppy ears, the whole body is kind of loose, they're happy to see you. That is a dog ready to interact, happy to do whatever, right? And this is what you want to look for. If a dog does not seem loose and happy to interact, you always want to start first reading that a little bit before you interact. And this is like the safe dog, 100%. Nothing to fear. However, that body language can change, and if it changes, also then you might have to back off, right? So, but this is a good starting point. So now, the more important part is when dogs act like they're nervous, stressed, or just feeling uneasy. Then everything changes, and there are a lot of little body language signs that a lot of humans are not aware of. And if you start looking for them, you will probably never unsee them. So now I have a border collie and a golden retriever, and my border collie was always a little bit of a sensitive, slightly skittish. I don't think she was socialized very well because we got her as a rescue. So she was always like, and she still is, now she's blind and almost deaf, but she was always like super careful with new people, and like lowering her head, that's a good sign, and showing the white in the eye, you call that whale eye, and I'm sure you've seen that, like they do something like that, and they kind of stare, and you see the white in the eye. That's a sign of, I don't feel quite sure about this, whatever it is, right? One even more clear sign that the dog doesn't really want to interact is when they look away. So now, most dogs, if they look away, they would most likely also want to walk away, but a lot of the time they can't because they're on the leash, right? So then I highly recommend to still not interact with the dog until they turn back to you, start sniffing you, and start showing some little bit more of an I'm relaxed, I trust you, I'm okay now for you to interact with me. If they look away, that's almost also humans, right? Like if I do this and I kind of walk away, well, it's a sign that I don't really want to interact with you and I for sure don't want you to touch me, right? So same with the dogs. It's a very clear sign that something is up. And then things like lip licking or nose licking, like they sometimes all of a sudden start doing that, like this stuff. And if they did not just have a spoonful of peanut butter or something, then that is a sign of uneasiness, and they do that a lot in many, many different circumstances. We have the whale eye. Then here in that right dog, you see the ears go kind of flat to his or her head. That is a big sign. If they start yawning out of context, like if they just got up, that's one thing. But a lot of dogs, if they're like, I don't really, then they, all of a sudden they start yawning, and it's a way to try to release stress, and it's a very clear sign something is not right. And then if they turn away and they all of a sudden start sniffing like very intensely, something is super important over here. You call that displacement behavior, and that is also a sign at the moment I can't really interact with whatever this is, and then they start doing something else. That could also be scratching, something completely out of context, and then a very like hard stare. That's already really to watch for. In this case, this dog to me looks a little bit like somebody's about to throw a ball or something, but you don't want to approach a dog like that because he's hyper focused, and whatever it is, like if you then all of a sudden come from behind and you don't really know the dog, things can happen, right? So these are all signs of uneasiness, stress. And then the shake off. The shake off usually happens after a stressful situation. So you had some interaction, you asked the dog to focus, you did some stuff with them, and then you're done and they walk away and they shake it all off. I'm sure you've seen that before. And that is a sign that whatever you just did was a lot. Something was a lot. It also happens with puppies when 3 people are touching them at the same time, and then they stop and the puppy like tries to relax. So all of these are things to look for. And here just a few more examples. I mean, this is pretty clear, right? Like that dog is hiding under the bed. This one, sad little thing, right? Really not feeling so great. I would always imagine it's like a metronome type thing. Something is really scaring them, and then it's good to just take a minute and just give them some space, try to make them feel better, maybe toss them a treat. And that one is also looking away and really doesn't want to be touched. So now I say do not approach or touch. That also includes not to try to give them a treat, because that makes the dog really conflicted in the head. Like sometimes they really want the treat, but they are still really afraid of the person who gives them the treat. So that is not a good thing to do either. And to hold out the hand for them to sniff, do not do that either, because all of that is just really invading in their bubble where they feel safe. So it's better to just stand there, not even look at them, just let them do what they feel like doing. Maybe toss the treat to them so they can, hello, you can come in. Maybe toss a treat instead of giving it to them.
Hello, Sabine. How you doing?
Hello, good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'll leave you to it.
Oh, you can listen if you want.
I would love to, but I'm working.
That's okay.
I know.
Well, I hope to see you soon.
Likewise.
Thank you, bye-bye. Okay, so here we got 2 examples. That one could be a nervous lick, I would imagine, with the golden retriever. The middle one, I would say he probably just had some peanut butter for the picture, right? But this thing, this one is very unsure. And I see that a lot with people who have like this very sweet dog. This is how my border collie was. And she kind of still is sometimes. And you have the dog on the leash. Somebody's like, oh, your dog is so cute. Can I say hi? And the people are like, sure. And then the person comes and kind of bends over and does all the things. And a dog that looks like that, they don't want you to touch them. That doesn't mean they're gonna immediately bite somebody, but you are not doing them a favor by allowing people to do that. What you can do is like, oh, just wait a little, you know, she's a little shy. If you just stand there, she's probably gonna sniff you. Maybe here's a treat, why don't you toss it at her? So then you're helping your dog to make this decision if they really want to interact or not, and that is very helpful for them. And of course, every dog can bite, and every dog has a lot of teeth in the front. So this myth of we have to put our hand into, that's what a lot of people do, right? Like you meet a new dog and they're like, oh, they can sniff me. So now we are sticking our hand in the bitey end of the dog. So technically, not smart, right? Because, I mean, if they're gonna bite, then this is great, like the hand is right there. And if they feel like this is really unsafe, I don't want that, and for whatever reason they can't get away, all of that can just increase the likelihood. So I looked up numbers, and of course not every dog bite is reported to insurances. I think they have about 66,000 claims each year, but I think those are like the really bad cases where somebody got really badly injured. But they are giving out estimates of how many bites you probably have each year in the US, you know, approximately. And 4.5 million dog bites, I would almost think it's more. Sounds, you know, like more like a thing that you could consider to try to avoid. And of course, a lot of bites happen to kids. We talked about this earlier, that kids often think dogs are like stuffed animals, so they can pull their ear, or can sit on them, or they can just pull their tail. And you cannot blame the kid for doing that. This is definitely the responsibility of the adult, but it's very important that adults learn to protect the dogs, and then by doing that, they're protecting the kid too. And then of course, kids are smaller than adults, so if they get bit, a lot of them get bit in the face, and obviously nobody wants that. So it's definitely worth looking into dog behavior and dog body language to avoid this, at the least. But then on top of that, to help the dogs to, you know, just feel safer. So there's a thing called the ladder of aggression, and it starts with very subtle signs, like I said, the yawning, the nose licking, and then it goes to turning away, trying to walk away, and it goes all the way up to biting. And right before biting, you have snapping, which usually most dogs do what they call an air bite. So they kind of snap, but they miss. And then sometimes you hear, oh, like he almost bit me, but I got away. And I can assure you, if a dog really wants to bite you, they will. So they're super fast, and there's some measurements about how fast they are. So if they air bite you, then that's on purpose. That's a warning. So that should be the last step to back off. But ideally, you back off when this happens. And okay, let's say for some reason you didn't, or not you, everybody, kids especially, but when a dog growls, that is a clear sign of, I want whatever this is in front of me to go away. And if we punish the dog for growling, they might learn growling is not okay, but they still don't feel, you know, relaxed and safe. So they might just skip the growling and they may go directly to biting. And that's really dangerous. So shutting down the growling and telling the dog, stop growling, or, you know, some people do that, is not a safe thing to do, okay? So all of this starts at the bottom, of course. So like I tell a lot of my clients, what do I do if I see any of these signs, any of this lip licking, whale eye, all this stuff, right? Like the yawning, the lying away. It is back off, give the dog a minute. That's all they're asking for. They do not want to interact with everybody right away. And if you think about yourself, I'm sure you also don't want to interact with everybody all the time immediately because of whatever, like you don't feel good, you have something to do, you just ate a big meal and you need a break, whatever it is, right? And that's pretty much the same with dogs. And if we try to listen to them, they most likely don't have to do this. Very nice teeth though. So what do? Try to approach it with very soft body language. Don't be overbearing with like leaning over them. And of course, the smaller the dog, the more invasive that feels for them if a human bends over them. If I have this wolf dog or Great Dane and I'm like, hi, how are you? You know, the little Yorkie, if they are a little scared of humans, this is it's a lot when we bend over like that. Then it's nicer to make yourself small, go a little sideways, and do not reach out the hand like I already mentioned. And then do not directly stare them in the eye because of this miscommunication. You can work on that in training and kind of teach them that eye contact is a good thing. I do that a lot in my puppy classes and in every basic training class, that if they look me in the eye, good things are happening, and then they get out of their shell. But naturally, eye contact is scary. And that's what humans do. They're like, oh, you're so cute, look at you, right? And then they're like, oh my God, like, get away from me. Yeah, we should respect our dogs' space. And then if you think they're ready to be pet, do not pet them on the head. Dogs do not appreciate that. Give them a little scratch on the shoulder or maybe on the chest, and then just do that for like 3 seconds and then stop and just see what the dog does. If it's my golden retriever, she's gonna be like, oh my God, why are you stopping, right? Like, we have to. But a lot of dogs are like, yep, I'm good. And if they then turn away from you, then they're good. Like, just leave them alone, and they might come back, and then you can continue. But that's an easy way to let the dog give consent. And like in the human world, no means no. So if they signal no, don't force them. And another big one that a lot of dog owners do that have little dogs is they pick them up. They say, you want to say hi to my dog? Well, now the dog is here, stuck. They don't have a chance to signal anything because the human is already in the hand and they're already in their face most of the time, patting them on the head. And that poor thing, the only way they can get people away from them is this. I had a client who had little dogs like that. They had them in the stroller, and they started biting people. And guess why, right? Like, the stroller was their safe place, and then they were like out and about. I don't know where that was, probably downtown. And people would like bend into the stroller and just put their hands in there, and the dogs were like, get away from me, like, I don't like that. And they probably started with this, but then if people keep going, then they get bit. Okay, so that was my little thing here. I hope that was helpful and kind of informative for you guys. Like I said, I have 307HappyDog. I am on social media, which I put here, but somehow you can't see it. So if you are interested in getting some more dog training tips and some of the things that I do, you can follow me there, and or you can just get in touch, call me, go to my website if you need any dog training. Tell your friends and family, and if you would like a business card or a sticker, feel free to take that. Thank you for your attention. Thanks, guys. Well, this was a small little thing, but that was good.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any